Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to welcome you all on behalf of Respekt and Demeter. It's a joy for us to see how many guests we have today and who participate at our common message in a biodynamic bottle. So if you shouldn't have got one of our bottles, please use one of the wines you have to be happy during the whole afternoon. We are happy that finally the biodynamic world is moving together and getting stronger. In the beginning, it's never that easy because everybody has to show his shoulders, everybody has to defend himself against other people who come and think they are better. But after the first respectful little battles, we are now really happy to have such a good companionship between us, between the Demeter group, between a lot of other biodynamic working people. In the very end, I will talk a little bit also about this. We're very happy that Monty Waldin is with us. He's really an expert on biodynamics, and so it's always very interesting to discuss with you, Monty. So thanks for being part of this afternoon. And I wish you a pleasant and joyful and interesting afternoon now with us as wine producers. And I would like to hand over the voice to Niki Moser to say a few words. Thank you for being here with us.
Hello, everybody. What a great opportunity to have the online tasting together with our friends from respekt-BIODYN today, which is really fantastic. And my great pleasure being part of. And I wanted to say a few words about how did that come to life. We were planning anyway. We're friends with many of each other from the group, and we were planning to have a common presentation last year at the Wiener Fair in Vienna. And due to the pandemic crisis, that couldn't work again this year. And finally, we said, why don't we use the tools we're more and more using anyway? And that gives us the opportunity to reach even more people than we would have in a small hall, like 30, 40 people could participate at the fair. So fantastic being part of. And yeah, it is important to say that here in Austria and in the countries around, we are proud having a very strong development of biodynamic, especially viticulture, also generally agriculture. We're still a small family, but we're proud to see that in Austria, we know that we are having around 3% of the viticulture already. And anyway, we are world champions in organic viticulture. But biodynamic viticulture is strongly growing, and also the biodynamic family is growing together. And we're more and more working together, and this is one very strong sign we're showing today. So we wish you all a pleasant and interesting afternoon with the information about biodynamic respect and Demeter philosophy and our wines to be tasted. And yeah, see you later then. Thanks.
Yeah. And before we change the slide from the statistic to nicer pictures, also very welcome from my side, and hopefully for an enjoyable afternoon. But I would like to look to the numbers once more. And what I think is so interesting is that if some of you remember when we started as a respekt group in 05 or 06 or 07, Demeter at that time wasn't that happy that they will have competition in a way on the market and also with certification. But in the meantime, when you look to these numbers, you see Austria, France, two countries where we have two very strong groups, respekt and Demeter and Biodynamic. And both of these countries are in the front runners of biodynamic farming and biodynamic viticulture. Swiss, of course, Donach, Demeter International Center makes an influence. But I think plurality has some positive aspects to biodynamic farming. And so I think it's quite good that there are different groups, and there's also diversity, which is a main principle of nature, but also diversity on the market.
Few words to Demeter, especially in Austria. As you maybe all know, Demeter Association was founded in 1928, so only a few years after the agricultural lecture of Rudolf Steiner. And already in 1927, the first biodynamic farms were founded in Austria. The foundation of Demeter Austria Association, so the National Association of Demeter, was founded already in 1969. At the beginning, there was no wine allowed, as the true anthroposophists were non-alcoholics. So wine and other alcoholic beverages were strictly forbidden. And it was only from the end of the 90s where the first wine producing farms were joining in. And I remember very well when we were joining Demeter in the year 2005, we were still only 14 wine producing members of Demeter, while as nowadays we're around 80, so strongly growing. We're about a third of the Austrian members that are wine producers, and also the other percentage of Demeter, or the whole number of Demeter farms is strongly growing. I remember in 2005 we were 80, today we're around 270, and the tendency is still very strong, strongly growing.
Yeah, quite a different story on the respekt group, much younger, almost 90 years, and alcohol, as you see on the picture, was never a question for the group and for the association. And for us, everything started with a consultant, Andrew Laurent, who helped us in 05 and 06 to change from our farming to the biodynamic principles. And he also convinced us to give all this, the group we were at that time, organization and with an association. And so we founded respekt in late 07. So it was December, the first December Eincare, which is a seminar which we do every year. And this was the start for the respekt group, which is smaller on numbers, but you see quite strong on hectares. So there are quite a few wineries which has quite an importance on the market. And it's not the same way to get member of the group as with Demeter. It's not only the guidelines which are in our main focus. We focus very much on a human factor, on the social responsibility of the people, because the people for us are more or less in the middle of everything. This is one of the biodynamic principles. And also the wine quality factor, of course, besides biodynamic farming and the guidelines, which also are important, and to get certified to be to put respekt on the label at the very end.
today the relation between our two associations is really has become a very good one. Although there were some difficulties with cooperation in the beginning, but the spirit is a completely different one nowadays. And it's not only a cooperation of the official bodies, but also we're very much friends with many people among these two groups. And we're sharing more and more of knowledge, also sometimes machinery, yeah, that's the way it should be, and we're on the same path.
Yeah, the great thing on sharing experience is we bring everything to a quicker evolution in biodynamic, and the animals could be kind of simple, because I remember when we started and it comes to the question of animals in farming, this was more or less a no-go. We were specialized wineries and didn't thought about having animals. But in the meantime, it's quite clear for almost every one of us to have at least some chickens or sheep to get access to the animals. And it's not so important to get enough dung for composting also. It's also very important to get all the emotions from these to get a better understanding of nature at the end. And this is a very quick evolution since we are really a big group, Demeter and Respekt, together, at least in Austria, but I would say also in Germany and other countries.
What's also quite important is the education regarding biodynamics, which is where we have a lot of cooperation with the Respekt group. For example, for a Demeter member, it's an obligation to join the basic group, the so-called Grundkurs, to be allowed to be a Demeter member before you become an official member. Also, we are holding seminars about composting, constellations, homeopathic treatments, formative forces, and all these things. And all these seminars are open for all the people who are interested, not only for Demeter members. And it's about the same with the Respekt group.
Yeah, we use that, and we're very happy that we can share the basic course of Demeter for our people who want to share us in the group. And but also we offer our own courses at Respekt, and all these courses are open for everyone, not even for Demeter or just Respekt. They are also for vintners who has interest in maybe changing in the future to biodynamic principles. And by the way, if you ask who is that on the picture, that's Martin von Markensen from the 𝗠𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. And if you have a chance to get a seminar with him, take it. It's really incredible, and he's a great guy in biodynamic farming. So, Michael?
I'm here.
Yep.
So you see, it's important for us to really work together, to learn together, to find a common path to the future. So one thing which is very good on the international basis is 2 years ago, the Biodynamic Federation Demeter International was built. It was established at the Goetheanum in Dornach during the last agricultural conference where everybody could participate. And so it brings together all different groups who are working biodynamic and who are accepting, or who at least have the Demeter standards. And the goal is to bring them all together, to speak with one voice, to have a common common voice also in politics, in European or world agricultural politics. There are groups like, of course, Demeter and Biodynamic and respekt-BIODYN and other groups who are not in wine. So we are specialized on wine. For a better future, for better agriculture, for better qualities, and also for better regulations for the future. So it's also to reform and translate Rudolf Steiner's principles for the future. He was not done back in 1924 when he held this agricultural courses. So there is still a lot to learn and to reform. And if we can all work together on this basic, it's a great thing. And that's also a wonderful thing that we can work and represent here together also today between Demeter, Austria and respekt-BIODYN. So as you see here on this slide, it's also a partnership for good goals. So thank you very much for this. And now we are handing over to Monty, and I think we will start the tasting now.
Right, thank you very much, Michael. Thank you all. As Michael said, we are going to start the tasting now, and it's always 6 pairs, and I just read so you remember who the producers are. It is Clemens Busch and Niki Moser first, followed by Johannes Hirsch and Christoph Hoch, then Sven Leiner and Georg Schmelzer, and then the 2 guys with the funny haircuts, Herbert Zillinger and Johannes Zillinger, Manuel Bloder and Judith Beck, following them, and in the end, a red wine flight by Birgit Braunstein and Kurt Feiler. So please clear the stage now for Clemens and for Christoph Hoch. Sorry, for Niki Moser, and of course Monty. And I'll stay there to watch the clock so we don't exceed. A first question for you, Monty, before you start asking questions. You have worked in conventional, organic and biodynamic vineyards and wineries in both hemispheres. And obviously, otherwise you wouldn't be here. The winner was biodynamics. How come?
Well, I was just bored of conventional winemaking, having worked in Bordeaux, and our oenologist, who is very well known and had worked with all the great estates in Bordeaux, he said, go and see a guy called Paul Barr, and he was a biodynamic wine grower. It was the first biodynamic wine I tasted, and it was just a revelation. And from then onwards, I've been interested in biodynamics. Okay.
Thank you, Monty. And I think we should start pouring the wines. We have a Riesling from Clemens, and Niki, you have a Riesling as well.
So shall I start asking some questions?
Absolutely. Thank you.
To Clemens and Rita Busch from the Mosel in Germany. The wine you'll be sharing is the Marienburg Farley, 𝗍𝘁𝗃 wie Riesling Trocken. Clemens, you're very interesting in the sense that for you, working environmentally is not just about the wine growing, it's also about the history and the culture behind the vineyards that you farm, that you've basically saved in these very remote areas in the Mosel. Why?
Yeah, for us, of course, you know, Mosel has a very long tradition of winemaking, a big history, and the steep slopes in the Mosel are a lot of hard work, and so it's a part of our culture. if you know the vineyards, the small terraces, they are built 400, 500, 600 years before. And for me, it's a very important aspect to keep this culture. Mm-hmm. And also, I think if we make the small plots in the vineyard, you asked before also, that's also a part of the history. So, people here in the Mosel are very poor people, and there has only a few vineyards every family. 50 years before, every family has also agriculture and animals in the house, and only a few vineyards. And that's a great life for these people. They have everything they need to live. And business of wine started in the 60s, very late here in this area. I think in the 60s we have around 80, 90 producers in a small village from 1,000 people. Mm-hmm. That must be wonderful in this time. But in the 70s, it started that winemaking get more professional here. And it's also the time when I started in my father's winery.
Mm-hmm. So why did you and Rita go organic initially for quite a few years, and you're very happy with that, and you moved to biodynamics? Why did you make that jump?
From organic to biodynamic, or?
Yeah.
I think it's not a big jump for us. When we started in 1984, we also used a lot of biodynamic aspects. And Nikki told it before, Demeter, we are in contact with Demeter in this time also to learn about biodynamic practices, but it was not really interest in winemaking. For Demeter, it's only a chance to produce juice in this time, but this was not our passion. So we did our own thing. We make our teas, and we started to read the books of Rudolf Steiner in this time. We are a group, 7, 8 producers, all located in the Mosel region. We did the first rules for organic farming in Germany, organic wine farming in Germany. And also we are a group of friends. So we have meetings every 2 weeks, discuss about the books of Rudolf Steiner, and yes, it's very interesting. It's like revolution for us, but there was no teacher. So it's difficult for us to understand. So every producer makes his own thing, gets his own sensibility for his work, and the teachers are coming later. Sometimes Pierre Masson visited me, and we know Georg Meissner since a long time, and they are both friends of us and gives us a lot of information and a lot of input.
So you have lots of different little plots. Do you treat them all the same way in terms of biodynamic preparations?
Yeah, of course. It's but the plots are not so small. Mm-hmm. For the local situation here, for the local standards, these plots are really, really big. We have the Rottenpfad, it's 1.8 hectare. The 𝗶𝗁 is 1.6 hectare, and Falkenlach 1.4 hectare. For our standards, it's really big vineyards. And it's a Marienburg vineyard. Here, in total, we have is 18 hectares, and we own 12 hectares of this vineyard site. And so more than 60% are ours. And then we have some colleagues also in the same vineyard sites which are working organically. And so 80% in the Marienburg vineyard is organic farmed. That's a wonderful and great thing. Yeah.
Excuse me to interrupt. There is a question from the audience. Where in the Mosel are the vineyards? Thank you, Mo.
We are exactly in the middle of the Mosel region. It's 𝗠់𝗱𝗿𝗁𝗁𝗁, a small village. in the middle of Trier or Koblenz. The German Mosel is 200 kilometers long. And before the Mosel goes into the Rhine. And the village is on the right side of the river. And the vineyards are on the left side. So, yeah. So if you look for the German Mosel, we are exactly in the middle.
Since I'm the bad time cop, we're running out of time. Could you say some words about your Riesling?
Yeah, Riesling, we have 99% Riesling in our vineyards, a little bit of Pinot Noir. And yeah, and we show the 𝗏𝗏𝗏. The 𝗏𝗏𝗏 is one of our Grand Cru vineyards in the Marienburg. It's a blue slate section. I told you before, 1.6 hectare in the best vineyard site. Steep slopes, very small terraces, totally south-faced. About the blue slate, it's originated in the Devonian period. That was 440 million years before. It is the hardest type of slate, sometimes with a little bit of quartzite inside. And the vines of the 𝗏𝗏𝗏 are 80 years old and older. So the roots goes very deep into the rock, and the vines needs a lot of energy, but you also feel this energy a little bit in the vine. You have a lot of attention, you have yeah, a lot of spirit in this wine, and that's for me the important part to bring the minerality, the saltiness in these wines. Mostly, if they are young, they are very strong, with a lot of astringation. People spoke about bitterness, but if they are 5-6 years old, they show the whole range. They get a very intense structure, complexity, and has a very high minerality and saltiness. Monty, would you like to say something?
Yeah, a little question. Did your different vineyard sites react in different ways to biodynamics, or was everything homogeneous?
No, that's the same. It's near together. The Marienburg is only 400-500 meters, so the vineyards are close together, but different types of soil. That's a great thing in the Marienburg vineyard. It's a small vineyard site, in total only 18 hectares. But 3 different types of soil. And if you look in wintertime or now, it's not totally green now, you see the color of the slate also in the ground, yes.
Okay, probably the final question. In biodynamics, we have this idea of the self-sustaining living organism, that you have like a classic field of vines and that's your lot. With you, your vines are spread out. How do you deal with that as a biodynamic grower?
Sorry, I didn't understand, Monty?
Yeah, when you have little bits of vineyards in different areas, how easy is it to think about the biodynamic organism?
I think that's quite easy. For us, the biggest problem is to spray the preparates. It's only handwork, but we do it with the 𝗏𝘁𝗶𝗃𝗁𝗁. And we go from top downstairs. It's also really easy. And the other thing is we have the natural greens in the vineyard, a lot of herbs, and we cut it maybe once a year. That's enough. If we have vintages like the last years, it's too hot. Nothing is growing. It's totally dry. I think when we had the respekt meeting 2 years before, everything was really green, flowering. But that's in middle of June. 2 weeks later, it's too hot. Everything was like burnt. So for us, it's sometimes not easy to have everything green. But to bring compost in the vineyards, that's no problem. That's part of our life, of course. We do it since 40 years, and that works.
We have another question. Sorry, Monty, and then we have to come to an end. Clemens, a question about the drinking age. 10 to 15 years, what do you think?
The 17 vintage, 20 years, that's no problem. Or longer, I think longer, yes.
Monty,
So we can make a meeting in 20 years and taste it again.
Monty, if you're very quick.
No, it's all right. I've my brain is now empty. Sorry, nothing. Sorry about that. Yeah, what I mean. Sorry about the phone. The texture of the wine. How did that change with biodynamics? The texture of the region.
Oh, that's difficult to explain because we do it a long time organic with biodynamic aspects. The people say the wine gets more structure, more complexity, and more deepness. That's in combination with the minerality. You feel more attention in these wines. That people says who knows the wines for a long time.
A very last question, Clemens, and then we have to go to move to Nikki. Is this wine vinified in stainless steel?
No, in old oak barrels. It's a traditional Mosel Fuder. It's a 1,000-liter barrel. And it's no new oak, it's old. As told you, it's the youngest barrel is 56 years old.
Thank you. Thank you, Clemens.
Thanks, Clemens. Nice to speak to you.
Yeah, Monty.
Yeah, take care.
But stay with us, Clemens.
Okay. So the next wine is Nikki. The next wine.
Yes, that's me.
Oh, Nikki, Nikki, you there? Hi.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Hi. So Nikki Moser from Weingut Manincor. Nikki, when you took over as the 16th generation of your family's wine estate, you changed the business in two ways. You only wanted to work with high quality vineyard sites and you wanted to work biodynamically. How did you start the journey with biodynamics?
First, I have to say that it was my father who changed the first point very strongly. As maybe most of you might know, I'm part of the Moser family. My grandfather was Mr. Lenz Moser, so we owned a huge surface of vineyards before, more than 100 hectares. And my father was responsible for the vineyards, but the wines were, the grapes were processed in the company of my uncle. So from the mid of the 80s, my father became independent and decided to reduce the surface strongly to about 30 hectares at the time, and decided to keep the very best vineyard sites. He wanted to be focusing on highest possible quality and expression of the wines. So that was the first point my father already decided, where I'm very happy about. And the second point is, yes, it's me who decided to go in the biodynamic way, directly from conventional to biodynamics. I was working with my father since the beginning of the 90s, but my father never was interested in organics. I always knew that I would go that way. And in the end of the 90s, it was a completely gut decision to go in that direction. It was in the vineyard of 𝗍𝗱𝗿𝗄𝗏 in Alsace, where I took the decision that it would be my way. And we started, how can I say, not very professionally in the beginning of the 2000s, and after some trial years, we switched to Demeter. We signed for Demeter in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. How difficult was the planning for biodynamics? Was it an easy thing to do to make the change, or was it quite complicated?
It was, at the beginning, was very complicated. You know, the trial years was done with the backpack sprayer, and in about 2.5 hectares, and then we expanded from year to year. We made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, and that's that's dynamic. We're always working. That's normal, I would say. We never had a consultant. We wanted to learn it by our own, and we had some difficult years, not only regarding vineyards, but also, you know, when the first people realized that we're going in the biodynamic way, they said, "What's that for? That's for nothing." Because still, at the beginning of the 2000s, organic wine had a very bad reputation, and biodynamic was seen as hocus pocus. So we had a very sharp wind blowing against us.
So, I mean, what advice would you give somebody in a similar situation to you who's thinking about going biodynamic, but isn't quite sure?
The good thing is that the biodynamic family is very open. So if you know on a biodynamic door and say you're interested to learn more, most of these doors would be widely open. So go out and ask the people, and have as much as possible exchange to the biodynamic working people. And there is so much of knowledge nowadays. That was completely different situation in the beginning or mid of the 2000 years. Go out and ask the people.
You've got vineyards in a couple of places that are there's quite a long distance apart between them. Yeah. How do you deal with that from a biodynamic perspective, when one of the ideas is this idea of a single organism or an organism of its own?
So we are here in the Kamptal region, but we also own vineyards in the 𝗠ście area, very close to the Hungarian border, with a focus on red wines, while as here in the Kamptal it's mostly a white wine, such as 𝗠cznie and Riesling. And of course, that's a difficult structure, because I can't be there every day. Fortunately, we have a separate, very competent team who is doing the work on their own. But of course, I have to be there quite frequently, especially for the biodynamic preparation work. That's mostly my thing I'm doing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how did your staff react? Did they think, oh dear, the boss has gone a little bit strange. He's gone to France. He's met this voodoo wine grower that makes one of the pioneers of natural and biodynamic wine. What have you done? Is that what they asked you, or they say, hey, this sounds interesting?
I mean, I remember the first years when we were doing our trial vineyards, when I was going through the vineyard with a backpack sprayer, and we were 3 people with a backpack sprayer, and the people were stopping at the road, coming to us to the vineyard, saying, "What are you guys, you idiots, are doing here?" And they said, "We're spraying biodynamic preparation, you know, horn manure." What's that? And it was not easy to explain. And yeah, I mean, there are still people laughing about us and saying we're a little bit crazy, but you know, we can live with that. And it's getting better and better because more and more people are getting an interest or an understanding about what we do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the domino effect, I think, and also if some of the best estates in the world are doing it, I think people have got a little bit more confidence and are prepared to accept it's a little bit of an odd situation with biodynamic sometimes. How did the 2 vineyard sites cope? Did they go, when you converted from conventional to biodynamic, these 2 very different sites, did they react in the same way, in the same time frames, or not?
We really learned that every region, not only every region, but every parcel is individual. When we converted, we realized that a few parcels, mostly those who are among what we call our best single vineyards, reacted very quickly within the first year. We saw good results, promising results, while as other vineyards, mostly the cooler, let's say not so interesting vineyard sites, partially took, from my estimation, about 7-8 years before we really saw promising results.
Yeah, 7 years is about what virtually every biodynamic convert says. It takes about 7 years to turn around. Yeah. Final question, just tell us a little bit about the wine that you've chosen today and your impressions of it.
The most important varieties here in the Kamptal region are Grüne Veltliner with a big percentage, about 65%. Second important variety is Riesling, which is here since ever. And I chose the Riesling from the Gaebling vineyard, which is also maybe the most famous vineyard site here in the Kamptal region, spread over 3 different communes. And our Riesling vineyard parcels are to be found in 2 different, in Rohrendorf and in the west of Rohrendorf in the Krems, and mostly a conglomerate decomposition. And 2/3 of that vineyard of these vines were planted in the year 1972. So we try to keep the vines as long as possible, to express as much as possible regional character, soil, and everything. So Gaebling is purely south exposed, is a historical vineyard site first mentioned in the year 1284, as we know. And the vine was vinified in stainless steel, of course, spontaneous fermentation, no enzymes, no other additives, very low in sulfur. And this is bone dry. It's really bone dry. It's below 2 grams of residual sugar. And I think it's a very true representative of a Kamptal region without makeup. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Thanks a lot. It's been great talking to you. And keep up the good work on both sides. Yeah, take care.
Thank you, Nicky. Thank you, Clemens. And I'm calling Johannes Hirsch and Christoph Hoch. They brought 2 Rieslings as well, one Kremstal, Christoph Hoch is from Kremstal, and Johannes Hirsch, of course, from Kamptal, and we're looking forward to that.
So we're starting with Johannes, yeah? Can you hear me?
Yes, I think it's not a big... Yeah, Johannes is first, you're right, sorry.
Yeah. Johannes, can you hear me?
Very well. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well. Welcome. You say that your family loves to travel an independent path, working only with steep, expensive to maintain vines on the Heiligenstein. And incredibly, during a red wine boom, you ripped out all your red grapes and decided to focus on white wine. And now you're biodynamic. How does that all fit together?
I think that's actually all very logical. You have to see that when we moved to Biodynamic, by the way, can you hear me? Good.
Yeah.
Again, thank you for the invitation. Great to be part of it. I think that was a time when you more and more suddenly tasted wines blindly, which had this certain fingerprint, which always amazed me. And not saying that the other wines were bad, but it was just clear that there is a certain winery thing in there which fascinated me. And for example, one of that was the Le Soula from Gobi 2001. I was totally stunned, and I saw it was very low alcohol and very drinkable, but really stunning. And I think it was a time where a lot of wineries moved into 2 directions, either more into the, don't not misunderstand me, mainstream, or do you really want to do what the winery tells you? And we are in the very privileged situation that we have probably almost 90% of our sites in extraordinarily great Kamptal terroir. And it was always the question, how do you get this better out, especially on the Grüne Veltliner side, where you always talk about 𝗏𝘁. And you also, I mean, sorry for being kitschy. I know it's said so often, but 2005 was, of course, also then the year where my daughter was born, the first of our 3 childs. And let's think about how future, where will it go to? And so we've even talking about the red wine. I think even we've been called best red wine producer of Kamptal in the Wiener magazine in the mid-90s and 90s. And that was the huge red wine boom. So the French paradox also jumped into Europe. It was totally logical to plant red wine. And what we did is, at the peak of the red wine boom, we threw it all out. But I see the varieties just actually as the vehicle to transport terroir. Look back 100 more years in Germany, in Austria, we drank village wines. We did not drink variety wines. And it's actually an easy story. Riesling is fantastic on the, where is it? Here, you know, that's where I sit, that will look at, just not with sun right now. So the left one here is the famous Heiligenstein conglomerate and the gneiss with the Geisberg. I mean, these terraces are fascinating for Riesling, and the lower parts have these wonderful 𝗠liche sites for Grüner Veltliner because of the high water demand. Yeah.
How did the taste and texture of those wines that you've been talking about change from being not biodynamic to being biodynamic?
On one hand, I think what my most important thing is, and I'm extraordinarily thankful that my father did a very unusual step. Imagine in the 70s, 79, he was willed to give our agricultural land. So we own about 10 hectares of agriculture. And at that time, a now very well-known cheesemaker, Robert, he was looking for land. So he's cutting the grass on the land and he get back the manure. So this is since 42 years now, we spend about 4 times more on time, money to do this system. But when I look at the climate change, on what the water situation is, if rain comes, everything comes at once. So your soil needs to be in the situation to take that lot of water in a very short time. And I have to say that this was my biggest advantage, especially in the conversion time, that the soils got great organic manure since more than 40 years. This is a huge step, and my father had to hear a lot of crazy stories from his colleagues for doing this. Talking about the terroir now, I mean, on the Riesling side, I would say it's very clear because you have the spicy minerality in the Heiligenstein, and this desert sandstone is so different to the gneiss microschist situation on the Geisberg with the very closed wines. This is maybe was more obvious before, but when we talk about the famous Kammerner 𝗠liche sites, we always talk about, of course, we have different variations in where does it show to how, and how deep is the 𝗠liche, but what is underneath the 𝗠liche? For example, the Lamm is on the bottom of Heiligenstein, so it's 𝗠liche, but conglomerate underneath, which brings this unique spiciness. And on the other side here, we have the Renner, which is 𝗠liche, but underneath you have the gneiss, with more classical juiciness. And I think, and sorry, and now at the point, especially on the Grüner Veltliner side, I think the biodynamic way helped us to focus even more into this different 𝗠liche sites and bring it out much better.
Mm-hmm. Do you think biodynamics has made the routing deeper or more complex?
Oh, absolutely. I think it gives, what I love about biodynamic is, I think focusing into terroir is just possible with the healthiest grapes you can get. And now I think being physiological earlier ripe and in the position to have the hopefully healthiest grapes you can get, you have a certain also, of course, acid level which underlines the whole thing. And you have a totally different complexity with drinkability. I think we should not forget wine is not spit wine. I want to make wine. You should always be happy to open another bottle. People who know me know that I love to eat. So I think ageability in combination with food friendliness is also an important point, but not that point, of course. But it's a good side point, you know. But yes, this is a totally different way of showing your terroir.
Okay, what are we looking for in the wine that you're showing today?
Zöblinger Geisberg, which is the upper part of the famous Geisberg hill. Sorry, I show you again here because I'm too crazy to show slides. So it's the upper part here. It's pure gneiss, which means it's, I'm back in a sec, it's this one here. So it's just a lovely piece about, sorry for boring numbers, about 500 years ago it was big as Himalaya, and this little rest now is about 340-50 meters high. And I think what the gneiss layers are here, I hope you can see it, is the same in the wine. Heiligenstein, the famous Heiligenstein on the other side is more almost showy. It shows the Riesling fruit very well. Geisberg is always laid back. It's more of wine you have to be friendly with. Give it some extra time, but that's why don't forget, especially the sommeliers, Don't forget the carafe for great white wine, very important. And it's a wine which has some it has this knistern, whatever that would be in English. I have no idea.
Clarity, crystallines.
Yes, it's really kicking here. There's a lot playing around. But if you give this a little bit of time, it layer by layer comes out in your glass. And I think it's again a wine. I'm very honored. Sorry, Clemens, but I had blind tasting. It's also very honored. Great friends from the Respect group, and they said blindly it must be Germany. What better compliment could I get? That's just...
Mentioning time, dear Johannes.
Yes.
This is the man who said he wouldn't take longer than 2 minutes.
So I have more. I have no idea. Sorry.
Okay. Great to talk to you, Johannes. And keep up the good work. Huh?
Yeah.
Very, very saline wines you produce. Very, very good. Really
Thank you so much. Very happy to be part of it.
Very appetizing and umami. Okay. So, are we on the next or not? No? See? Okay.
Yeah, Christoph.
So, Julie and Chris, it's Christoph, yeah?
Yeah.
Servus Monty, servus Silvia,
Hi.
hallo Alex, grüß dich.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Nice to see you. Nice to hear your voice. Alrighty, so your family has nearly 400 years of winemaking history, and you were the first to go biodynamic. Do you see yourself as a revolutionary or an evolutionary with an independent outlook?
Well, I think this is a question of the view you take, because if you have the view from maybe surrounding wineries, it's more the revolutionary part. Because why? Because we're doing things different from A to Z, from every part. We're trying to develop year by year, and of course, this is something what not every other surrounding winemaker can agree with. But for me personally, and also for our family, we definitely see it as an evolution. So still, of course, it's a family where right now 4 generations are living more or less in one part, at one street, you can say. And at least after almost 10 years now, so I think I'm one of the youngest who farm in biodynamic here in that group. So big pleasure and big honor for me to be here. But for me and for the family, we definitely see it as an evolutionary part, because at the beginning, of course, everything was new, everything was exciting as well. But at the end, we didn't know exactly what we did. But we did it with pleasure, and we did it with a highly motivation, which is still here. And now, year by year, we see the results, and I can definitely see it as an evolutionary part.
Okay, I mean, you're interesting in terms of the geology. You know a lot about geology, and in your vineyard, you've got various pieces of geology. With biodynamics, does everything change at the same speed, or are there differences between the different terroirs?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I would really say there are differences. Even though if we do the biodynamic farming, the treatments, so what we do is for all vineyards the same. So for our biodynamic aspect, we don't select the vineyards. For many other reasons, we do a selection, but for the biodynamic treatments, we definitely don't do. And we see differences, that some plots, that some vineyards are changing faster to a positive result, whatever is positive, but what is positive for us, for that what we want, for our target, and other vineyards who really take their time. So I think to say it in numbers, I think there, from my feeling, it's like some vineyards already you recognize a huge difference after 3 years, 4 years. And for some vineyards, we just see it now after almost 10 years.
Isn't that a good thing though, that we talk about this individuality in biodynamics, And what we don't want is the conventional system, with fertilizer, herbicide, and everything looks the same and every wine tastes the same. So that sort of individuality, I think, is a very good sign.
It is, and it makes us also learn from these vineyards, because we see these differences also of changing the vineyards, and we can through that result we can see it from a different point of view, and maybe think if we should change some part of our farming to get faster to our target. But we didn't thought about this in the beginning, so it also make us day by day learning and developing. Hopefully.
But when you took over the vineyards, they were already, I would imagine, in quite good condition. They weren't in a terribly bad state, were they? Or were they?
Well, I wouldn't say terribly bad, because that's really bad. Let's say I'm super happy about where we are located. So how the village, where also the wine, so Hollenburg is the village where we are living and growing and vinifying our wine, and so I'm super happy about that. But as I took over those vineyards what I'm farming right now, you have to imagine my vision where I wanted to go was somewhere totally else. So that was the reason why the change was very, very strict. And so, yeah, but right now we're happy in all lines.
Yeah, just tell us about the wine that you're showing today, which is the Riesling Hollenberger. And
the wine, there are two questions. Well, actually, it's one.
Go ahead.
Choose a blend of vintages, or why did you choose a non-vintage?
Yeah. So this is that's a good question, important thing. As I started with my winery, which was the same time with as a farming biodynamic, I had really, let's say, challenging or big differences in the vintage. And so at the beginning, at the first years of the wine, the vintage was always in front. So what you're tasting, what the aromas and everything, it was driven by the vintage. But my focus was always to show the origin, and that was, I think, the biggest step and the biggest decision, the biggest reason for the decision. Why we said, okay, we go for a non-vintage blend. We blend matured vintages to the wine, which are already settled, which are balanced, and which shows already more its origin and less the vintage. And we're using younger vintages as well to bring and to keep the freshness of the wine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought, because you sent me a bottle of your of that particular wine, and I thought it was fantastic. I love the idea that there wasn't a vintage on the front. I love the idea that it told me that it was from 3 different vintages and that it was a blend, a fractional blend. And we've got into this habit of having these varietal wines that make things simple for people. This was a varietal wine, but multi-vintage, and I take my hat off. I think it's a great move on your behalf, and doing it with biodynamic grapes, that lovely sort of inner freshness and vibrancy. It's absolutely outstanding. Really, really great thought process. That you real. I can even see you now. Your brain is working on about 55 different levels with another plan, another dastardly plan to change the face of wine. But I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
And right, have we missed anything? Yeah, just one final question about this idea of the farm organism in biodynamics. This kind of this idea. How do you react to that? You trying to strive to get there?
So I think for me, after the few years of farming biodynamic, the farm organism is getting more and more important and very big role. What is our project now, the latest projects on these on these Corona years, is that we focus on the, let's say, on the spraying, on the treatment of the vineyards to make all these treatment as fast as possible on ourselves. So that means that we started now even to plant herbs to grow herbs. So we're not just winemakers anymore. We also trying to get herb specialists. And from these herbs, we make, we make tea, we make ferments, we have different vineyards where we do all these trials. And this is, I think this is for the time right now, for this evolution step right now, where we are right now. This is that part for our farm organism to find, and for us here in Hollenburg, a solution where we can work with the herbs we grow or which are growing naturally surround the vineyards. Excellent, great. It's really good to hear you. I mean, I can think of about 4 or 5 articles I could write on this one interview. Keep a journalist in a job. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Thanks, Monty. Okay. Yeah, nice to. I hope to see you in the flesh at some stage again. Of course, with longer than 6 minutes. Yeah.
Thank you, Christoph. Thank you, Johannes. And now we're coming to wine producers from very different regions. Sven Leiner from Pfalz in Germany and Georg-Schmelzer from Gols in Burgenland in Austria. Mm-hmm. Both of them brought Weißburgunder, which is they're quite rare in both regions, I think. Okay, are they with us then? They're there. Sven, hey Sven, how are you doing?
Hey Monty, nice.
All right. So first question. The Pfalz is Germany's strongest market in terms of direct sales and wine consumption. Why complicate life and profit margins by going organic and then biodynamic?
So complicated. For me, if I overtook the winery in the year 2000 and begin to work there on my own, I feel that it's very, very important for me to have a good feeling during the work, and I get no response from spraying the fungi or the synthetic fertilizers or something else and such stuff. And it was not a plan, it was not a goal, but I changed things during my work to feeling better, and it began with the soils and with bring cover crops inside, which bring compost inside, and so it developed step by step. And so in the year 2005, we did our first experience with the biodynamics. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you had there's a lovely phrase that you made, that you said you wanted to create a new relationship to our cultural space, meaning your vineyard and your spare land, and I'm sure you're very receptive to your ideas. Yes. Yeah, the idea is, and the idea wasn't, and is that you can only make a good wine from healthy and happy wines inside your vineyards, and so that was the engine of this development, to work on this way, to get a resonance from your work, from the material which you are working, and we worked a lot inside the vineyards, but the feeling, the idea was that this doesn't end with your property line. It goes on and goes around, and it's not only your soil, it's the land around, it's yes, the whole region. And so we started another project as well outside of the vineyards, on our lands, where we have the compost that we do there, a lot of cover crops, and we are planting trees and building some houses for the insects and so on. And this is the idea that you can create your region around, and where your vineyards are located, and the whole region has an influence of the nature of the biodiversity. And if that all goes healthier and healthier, you make your wines happier, and that's the idea. And also, I think it's like if the colleagues are see that some things are changing inside our vineyards, or also around, if they are living new animals, or animals they were gone for a few years and they are coming up and growing up. It's like you are sowing another future. If these guys see, okay, that works, and you can create your future and the nature as well. Yeah.
Yeah. What a another great. You should become a journalist, sowing another future. I mean, you're just a born headline maker. But it's great to hear what you're doing.
We have a question here, Sven. How many biodynamic producers are in Pfalz?
I don't know. I think it's about 15 up to 20. Yeah. Okay. It's growing up.
Kind of
in the last year. It's growing very fast.
I think it's a region in Germany with the most biodynamic growers, right?
Yeah, it's a very good dynamic here. Yeah.
Yeah. There's two more questions. A preview on the wine. Is it not yet bottled?
The wine is bottled. The wine is bottled since end of March, but we started to sell the wine in September. So this is our first stage to show this wine. It's quite young, but we decide we do this in this quality the first time. To hold it back before selling, and also we store it a longer time in the cellar, and yeah, we decide to show it here.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Is there anybody else waiting for a question? So just tell us about the wine that you brought.
Yes, the wine is vintage 2019. It's called 𝗶𝗄𝗏. 𝗶𝗏𝗏 is a synonym for our best vineyard site. It's called 𝗜𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁, and on the top of the 𝗜𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁 there is a small chapel, a small white chapel. You can see it far away, because this vineyard site is located inside the Rhine Valley in the southern part of Pfalz, and it's the highest slope, or the highest point over there. It's like a limestone reef, and it's our best vineyard site there for Riesling, all the Pinots, especially Weißburgunder, but also the Pinot Noir and Chardonnay as well. And yeah, the vinification there was in older wooden barrels, and we store it for 1 year on the full yeast, and then we wrecked it one time before we pick the 2020 and bring it to the stainless steel, and from there we do the bottling without filtration and something else, and now here is it.
And which insect did you feature on the label for that wine? You always put an insect on the label. Which one? Yeah. I know which one it is, but you got to tell everybody else.
We have different insects on the labels. The first idea was to find a special insect for each vineyard site, but this was yeah, it was not possible, and so we decided to have one insect from the ecosystem in the vineyard to each grape variety. And on the Weißburgunder, we have on all the Weißburgunders on the different qualities, we have a ladybug. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Also, we have, maybe you can see it behind me, the eye in the liner is a small ant.
Perfect. Alrighty. I think that's it, yeah? Is that all right? Yeah. Sven, it's been really nice talking to you, by the way.
It was a pleasure.
Finally, not having to deal with Iyamar, so it's really nice to hopefully see you in the Pfalz sometime, okay?
Hopefully.
Yeah, cheers. Alrighty. So next is it Georg?
Yes, hello.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Hello. Hi, good afternoon. How's everything going?
Good, very good. Thanks.
Okay, do you just want to introduce yourselves?
Yes, yeah. I'm George Jr. My father runs the winery since he was 17. And yeah, I'm now in the winery since 3-4 years. And yeah, that's it. My father runs the winery when he started the winery. So we always tried to work biodynamic and spraying herbs and things like that. But yeah, the last step needed a long time. So to go to Demeter, it was 2007. So
You've got a great quote on your on your website. You say the goal of our work is not to maximize, but to harmonize and support nature in its fertility. So how does that work in practice, given that you got the vineyard as an economic crop that pays the bills?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, our target is not to improve the amount of per hectare or more bottles every year and things like that. So we want to make a stable product, and this for every year. So we want to make stable vineyards with where we need the insects, the compost, the herbs, the preparates like 500 and 501 biodynamic preparates, and so we can produce healthy grapes and make healthy wines and stable wines.
So just give us an idea of where the vineyards are. Is it a humid area, a very dry area?
No, it's very dry. So it's also the same region like 𝗍𝗁𝗄𝗄, so in the east of Austria, so close to the Hungarian border. So around the lake 𝗍𝘁𝗍𝗿, and it's very dry and very hot summers.
And why did you go biodynamic? And what was the fundamental reason? Was it quality, or was it because it was trendy, or?
Because my father was also thinking a few years ago before to change something, because he didn't want to make normal wine, conventional wine, and so he has to run with all the other wineries, and so he said we have to make something different. And so, that's actually why.
So apart from the biodynamic bit, what else did you change in the vineyard in terms of fertility and this idea of this organism idea, trying to be as self-sufficient as possible? Obviously, you can't be 100% self-sufficient, but what changes did you make to make that worthwhile?
We changed also the green government, so we have grass growing the whole year. We only cut it once a year, so the grass is sometimes higher than the vines, or the same height, and that's one part. And also the spraying of herbs and the preparates, compost preparates, and and we don't fertilize much, so only compost or dung, and we lowered the amount per hectare. So that was also at the beginning very hard to have less amount, but now they are stable, and with all the insects, with all the mushrooms, the fungals in the ground, also in the earth, and the insects flying around, so that it's a stable vineyard, and we can produce every year nearly we have the same amount per hectare.
So basically what you're saying, that the conversion period was a little bit difficult in terms of the vineyard adjusting. Yes, but after now the vineyard has settled down in terms of vigor and, and vine expression and inter-row management, and now the vines have, I would imagine, put down deeper roots, and they're stronger than they were before. Yeah, that was the idea.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yes.
And this idea of the farm organism, you seem to be kind of very natural and sort of rejoicing almost in having a quotes untidy looking vineyard, but for you that's what works best in terms of agroecology.
Yes. So it's a lot of our neighbors or our wineries around, they're laughing at us, maybe because the grass is high and it looks a little bit messy, the vineyard sometimes, but that's it. And the grapes are healthy, and that's the only thing. And maybe they get older than other ones because lower harvest over years, so they are not burned out after 25, 30 years maybe.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, do you see the way that the way that you work the vineyards very much mirrors how you make the wines? You're trying to be as low intervention as possible. In terms of your clientele, who buys your wines, and what do they say? Why do they buy them? Why do they like them?
Because they know how we work, and they say that's natural wine, and because how we work and how we deal with nature, and and also because of the taste, maybe. That's also.
I have two questions for you, Georg. One regarding the wine we are tasting, and one in general. Can you tell us about your decision not to use sulfur and how this affects your wines? And next question, pointing to the wine, what do they use for aging the wine? Old wood, amphora, or concrete? And how old are the wines?
So we in our vineyards, we are looking now for 2 or 3 years to don't use any sulfur and copper, and we're close to work without sulfur and copper, and also in our wines, and because we don't want to give impact to the wine, so we still nature how it works and pressing, and that's it. And some wines we don't pump, so we only work by gravity, and still nature how it is. The wines we have from 7 years old up to 35 years old wines. They're not still very old because we changed 15 years before, so they're still young. And the Weißburgunder is actually 25 years old, the wines.
Okay. So what about I mean, in the winemaking, sorry, that's all completely natural, yeah?
Yes. Yeah. So
and how do you have any issues with you know, some wineries with cover crops get issues with nitrogen lacking during fermentation because they've overdone it on the cover cropping in the wrong way. Do you ever have any problems with nutrient deficiency or stuck?
Not really. At the beginning, when we have some new vineyards, they are not worked biodynamic before, so we have to seed cover crops, and that's the only one time we seed cover crops. And so after a few years, there are completely different flowers, plants. So there are some plants that die in summer and don't grow, and so there is no big problem with that.
It must be very satisfying for you if you take over a conventional vineyard that maybe is very tired and compact and not very happy vineyard, and you bring it back to life. What is the time frame to get that from the day you get it until you finally say, yeah, now it's given me the wine I want? Is it about 7 years?
It's 5 to 7 years, 5 years minimum to make a healthy vineyard.
Okay.
And every year it rises and goes better and better.
Okay. Alrighty. So just time for one more very quick question. Just describe the start of the wine.
And please, the aging of the wine. This was one of the questions. Thank you.
Sorry. The aging is we choose Weißburgunder because it's maybe we think it's the wine what you can drink and at any time and to any food. So it's fermented in stainless steel, and the end of the fermentation is in oak, in used oak, and it was 2 years in barrique, used barrique barrels. Yeah, so it has also freshness and fruit and also full body. But compounds or everything else. So that's the natural wine, how we think about it. And
very refreshing.
Aging is 2018, sorry, and we have the Weißburgunder like this we make now for 7 years, and yeah, it's still the same. When you shake it before you open it, so it tastes always fresh and.
Yeah, well, I thought it was excellent. The wine, it's really good, and have that lovely tangy flavor with a nice texture.
Yes, yeah.
It's like liquid food.
Yeah. The body, full body, and
keep up the good work.
Thanks.
Alrighty.
Bye.
Now we're calling for two guys from the same region, same name, and same weird haircut. Johannes and Herbert Zillinger from Weinviertel.
Okay, hang on. Is he there?
Yeah.
Is it Johannes first, or is it Herbert first? Who's first?
It is Herbert first with a Veltliner, and Johannes following by a blend.
Okay. Is he? Where is he? Is he around?
Hi, Monty.
Oh, hi. How are you?
Fine, thanks. The haircut is because of the COVID situation. I don't know if the hairdressers have already opened the doors again.
This is a lie, Herbert. This is a pure lie, because I've been knowing you so many years now, and your hair hasn't changed since COVID.
That's nice. You're easily recognizable, very distinct. Very distinct. So your website's got some lovely information on it, and even though you're in the Weinviertel, you say you're in the driest part of the Weinviertel. How difficult is that as a wine grower, and why would you want to go biodynamic in those kind of conditions?
Yeah, we are located in the southeastern part of the Weinviertel region, very close to the Slovakian border, and very close to the Machfeld region, which is a very flat region, famous for different vegetables. And yeah, it's located 40 kilometers northeast of Vienna, in Ebenthal. The next bigger village is 𝗫𝗫𝗏. It's really one of the driest parts and one of the warmest parts of the Weinviertel region. And yeah, it's going to be more and more tricky with climate change, but I think with a good work with the soil, we don't have to be afraid about the situation. We are not really happy with climate change, but I'm sure we don't need to be afraid of it.
Mm-hmm. So what particular techniques are you trying to use, whether they're quote organic ones like cover cropping, or biodynamic ones like composting and spraying 𝗿𝘁𝗄𝗏 500, etc.? What's your strategy to mitigate the heat in the dry soils?
I think regardless of the type of soil and microclimate, it's important to keep the soil alive and vital. We are always searching for a perfect balance. If we get a healthy, well-balanced soil, we have the chance to get well-balanced vines and the result, well-balanced grapes. And that's what we are searching for. And the compost management and the greening management are also activating soil, but also building humus, which helps us to storage the water and to have a better water storage capacity in the soil, and that's very important.
How often do you spray the 𝗿𝘁𝗄𝗏 500 preparation, seeing as that is a good thing in terms of livening up dry soils? What's your regime on the 500?
Yeah, for sure, it's very important to work with the preparates. We want to stimulate the life in the soil with the preparates. We want to stimulate the generative growth in the soil, the generative growth of the plants. The plants are not oversupplied with nutrients. They grow more harmoniously. The vegetative growing is a little bit reduced to a healthy level. which in turn brings lower pH values, higher acidity and riper acidity values, a lower sugar value, and at the same time more extract and more taste into the wine. And that's what we are looking for. The only drawback is that with this kind of agriculture, also the yield is a little bit reduced if you compare it to some conventional neighbors, but not because of diseases, but because of this more gentle and more natural growing.
Yeah, less vigorous.
I
mean, some people say with climate change, more vigor is better because you get bigger berries and there's more juice and maybe less sugar. What's your view on those on pH numbers and sugar numbers, potential ripeness numbers, from a biodynamic perspective? The balance.
Yes. With this work with the soil, the pH is going down from year to year. So we are working with pH in the moss from 3.05 to 3.20 at Weingut, which is for this grape variety quite low, and this brings more vibrant character into the wine and more more pungent character into the wine. And we've seen that with our work with the soil and with the more gentle growing of the plants, the pH was going down very rapidly in the last years. And yeah, we have more gentle growing of the plants, smaller cells with thicker cell skins, yeah, more extract in the grapes, more taste, lower sugar. Lower.
How does that affect your pressing? When you're pressing whites, for example, if you've got thicker skins, is that a good thing or a bad thing? These thicker skins.
We need a little bit more time for that pressing process. So most of our wines, especially from our classic line, are worked very conventional. So we are harvesting the grapes by hand. We are putting them into the press and are crushing them just a little bit, the whole bunches. And then we are pressing very gentle for a few hours. It needs a little bit more time, but that means no problem for our small winery.
And less phenolics as well, I guess, yeah.
Pardon me?
And less phenolics, less risk.
Yes, for sure. We don't want to get too much phenols from the skins, but yeah, we are searching for wines with a good structure, with a meaty structure, and also with some nice phenols, but especially in these hot years like 2019 and 2018, not too much phenols from the skins.
When you worked with your father, the farm was a mixed agricultural farm with grain, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
How have you and Carmen thought about the vineyard in terms of the organism idea in biodynamics? Have you got the space for that or not, or is it a little bit difficult?
Yeah, for sure it was a little bit difficult in the first years because my parents worked this kind of mixed agriculture in a conventional way, and we wanted to switch it into first organic and afterwards into biodynamic agriculture, and it was not easy to switch it in that way, especially not easy to switch my parents. It was more easy to switch the vineyards than to switch the parents in their mind. And yeah, but we have noticed that the conventional agriculture doesn't get us any further. That it's not good for our soil, for our environment, for our health. And after the birth of our first daughter, Amelie, was in 2008, we told ourselves that we wanted to get out of this sick exploitative system and operate a form of agriculture that is not based on the costs of others. We don't want to work at the cost of our climate, of our soil, of our employees, our health and our environment. And yeah, with the step into biodynamics, we have seen that our unrestricted trust in nature and the respectful work with the nature, almost all problems disappeared. Yeah, and that's the way we are working and
okay.
Yeah,
Final question. Tell us about your Grüne Veltliner Kalkvogel.
Yeah, Kalkvogel vineyard is one of our hottest and driest and most barren part. One of our most barren and driest location. It's pure limestone. And this location brings each year a very special, very terroir-driven type of Grüne Veltliner. For me, one of the most exciting Grüne Veltliners in our portfolio. We have nearly 80% of our vineyards planted with Grüne Veltliner. We have some different Grüne Veltliners, and the Kalkvogel for me is each year one of the most interesting wines. Grapes are harvested by hand, are whole bunch pressed very gently. The most comes directly from the press into large wooden barrels without clarification, and is fermented spontaneously. In all our wines, nothing is added and nothing is removed. In the end of the fermentation, the wine makes an lactic fermentation, like all our wines. That's also very important to us. And after about a year on the full lees, the wine was bottled, unfiltered.
Okay.
So totally nothing is added, nothing is withdrawn to the anti-vinification process. Only a very small amount of sulfur is added. The total sulfur in all our wines is mostly between 30 and 40 milligrams, and the free sulfur between 10 and 20 milligrams, just to get the wine really clear and stable. That's it.
Perfect.
A very last question, Herbert. How often is the 500 used? This was not really answered, is one of the questions.
It depends on the year, mostly 1 or 2 times a year.
Okay, thank you. This was a quick answer, what we needed.
Yeah, thanks, Herbert. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Take it easy. Yeah. Thanks, mate. Alrighty.
Johannes.
Right.
Hi, all together.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, thanks, fine.
So Johannes, you grew up on a family estate in the Weinviertel, nearly 30 years of organics, but when you took over in 2012, you went biodynamic after visiting the Republic of Georgia. And there's a lovely little story that you wrote. Could you explain why you made the jump to biodynamics?
So it wasn't only the trip to Georgia. There was a lot of things what influences this change from organic to biodynamic, because the thing is, if you grow up on an organic farm, you learn very early to think in a different way, or maybe in a sometimes crazy way. And yeah, but the Georgian trip was for sure one of the things what influences me a lot with biodynamic farming. So I have seen there are a lot of very positive archaic ways to work in the vineyards or in wine cellars of these small wineries. What I've seen there, so far away from all the techniques what we had here. And when you taste the wines there, they were full of liveliness, full of vibrancy, what we personally never had in our own organic farmed wines. So, and at this time when I came back from Georgia, I thought about it, and I found some points what in my mind makes sense to change in the winery. So think the idea was at first to go maybe one step back in terms of super low intervention winemaking in the cellars, and again more trust in nature and vineyards. What brings me at this time maybe 3 steps in front in terms of more vibrancy in the wines and more balance in the vineyards.
So it was about, basically for you, it was about vine expression, changing your vine expression and quality, more vibrancy, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. And was that, in the end, was that with the biodynamics, was that easier than you thought, or was it more difficult than you thought, making that jump?
We changed to Demeter in 2012, and also my father farms always as natural as possible the vineyards. He prepares teas and extracts and so on. So it was not really a different jump or a big jump, but for sure it's always a learning by doing, and this is also a thing what we have now. It's year by year is different, and you learn each year to make things sometimes a bit different than before, and yeah.
Yeah, there's another great quote of yours. I mean, you could easily be a politician, but this is a really lovely quote. You say that you see biodynamic farming as an opportunity for humans to give back to our soils, our plants, and our environment a small piece of what you call a lost original condition and information about these plants. And that's a really great way of expressing it. I think that your view is that the less, obviously man has to be a farmer, actually man in general, for humans, and but you still want your plants to have a wildness about them, a wildness of expression. How does that come through in your wines?
So I think the whole organic sector changes a lot in the last years. So 30-35 years ago, organic farming was in the end really an organic farming, let's say it this way. But now also the industry takes place, or the organic industry takes place in the organic wine world, and for me it's always a bit hard to see now the big difference between conventional winemaking and organic winemaking. You have a lot of ingredients what are allowed to add, and for me is biodynamic farming, I think, is really now the only way to farm really sustainable in the end. So I see biodynamic farming more as a holistic way of farming. So it's not only for the soils or for the plants. It's not only spraying some preparates. I think it's also a way of farming for us, for the family, or for the families of 2 groups, for the growers. And so, for example, we have a lot of different projects always running in the winery. So my wife Claudia works with bees since 2 years now. My small daughter Miriam, 8 years old, breeds chicken the moment for the next vineyard project. The moment she starts with 4 chicken, now she had 30, 35, I don't know exactly. It's her project. Andrea, my sister, works also in the vineyard and the winery. She prepares teas, extracts, etheric oils, and so on for vineyard spraying. Yeah, all these projects running, and I think with biodynamic farming, you see the whole winery, all the processes with different eyes, and you have a different feeling for plant, soils, and surrounding.
Perfect. Yeah, great sort of synopsis of what biodynamics could be. Tell us about the I don't know how you pronounce it, Parcellaire?
Parcellaire
Blanc, #1, which is a blend of Riesling and Chardonnay. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, so as the last change in the winery, I thought about the concept of origin, or let's say terroir. So in my wine world, I think origin is not more fixed or based on a single vineyard, but more on a style, or let's say better said on personally me in the end. So Parcellaire Blanc is one of these wines. It's a selection of my coldest vineyard pieces. So it's out of a northern and the northeastern slope. It's based off, you said it, Welsh Riesling and Chardonnay. So Welsh Riesling is whole bunch fermented in amphors for a short time. And Chardonnay is direct pressed and aged for 6 or 7 months underfloor. So yeah, so it's my personal idea of a cool climate style in the area.
Yeah, I mean, the bottle that you sent me, I thought was outstanding.
Yes,
with its freshness and expression, really good. I think we could still just wanted to say something.
Yeah, I'm just repeating what the question I'm reading. Fascinating wine, but low alcohol and very refreshing acid, as you said. When do you harvest, Johannes?
So especially this wine, so it's out of very old, of a very old vineyard. It's 35 years old Welsh Riesling and a 25 years old Chardonnay. It's harvested mid of September, so it's not super early. So we have vineyards what we harvest earlier. So with climate change, normally we start with harvest in the 3rd or last week of August, so very early, because I always take care of my acidity. But to be honest, also at this time, the grapes has a physiological ripeness. It's not only that we harvest because of acidity. The grapes what we harvest are 100% ripe. And therefore, yeah, acidity is everything what I like. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got the acidity and also a very nice texture as well, that particular wine. And you think from a white wine, from a cool near the forest, you think, well, it's going to be a little bit thin, but it's not. It's got a lovely inner roundness to it, and very well expressed, very precise, very well thought out. I thought very good piece of work. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Johannes. Thank you, Herbert.
It's nice to talk to you. Huh? It's really stimulating. Very interesting.
Yeah. Thanks, you too.
Please stay, Johannes, for a moment. Has farming biodynamically changed the way you think about which varieties you want to work with? A very quick answer, please.
Not really. So I work on the same vineyards and varieties what we have before.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, take care.
Yes.
Thanks. Bye bye.
We're moving to Styria and Burgenland again. Styria, Weingut Loimer, which is one of the pioneers in regard of biodynamic wine growing. And there is Manuel Ploder, the son, and on the other hand, there's Judith Beck. Yeah, she looks young, but she isn't a pioneer of biodynamic and a very convinced biodynamic wine grower. Hi, Judith.
Hi. So we're starting off with.
Yes, we start with Ploder-Rosenberg, Kara.
We got somebody. Hi. Hey. Hi. We can see you. Hi, Mama. How are you? Okay.
Fine, and you?
Okay. So, permaculture in a few words. How would you describe it?
Permaculture in a few words.
Yeah.
I would say the easiest to think about is when we think we have a farm on the top of a hill, and we have the possibility to farm all the earth around our building. And if we plant on each side, on each highness, on each slopeness, the right plant, which is perfect for those conditions which happen, maybe on the north side down or on the south side up, we will have the healthiest plant with the maximum of output. And this idea we try to integrate in our farming of wine, because with permaculture it's possible to make the microclimate which we have to force them to make it stronger because of building stone walls or hills with certain plants to plant there. And yeah, how to it's new, it's old to have vegetables and stuff direct in the vineyard to grow, but because of time change and philosophies change, the system now we found in the vineyards, it's not possible to do it like that in the past. So we try to find new ways to do it now. And one big inspiration part is permaculture.
Mm-hmm. Why is, in your view, permaculture such a good fit for perennial crops like grapevines and for biodynamics in terms of creating a self-sustaining biodynamic living organism?
The permaculture, it's possible to create biodiversic islands in the vineyards, and with the thinking about which plants and how to build it, it's possible to force the synergy we are moving on. The synergy with the plants and the synergy with the insects and the other animals, and also with the humans.
There's another great quote on your website, on your family's website, and it says quite simply, it feels really good to be able to feed ourselves, because you obviously grow lots of different new fruit and other edible things.
Yeah, it's also, of course, the thinking behind the feed ourselves, but also to have plants to use to make some tea, to spray on the winds and stuff like that. You know, kind of the story from 𝗍𝘁𝗿𝗁𝗁 he told us from his winery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that idea of self-sufficiency.
I have one question, Manuel. Tell us about Sauvignon Gris. Is it a hybrid like Bronner?
Both of them are not to call as hybrid. To call PV grapes as hybrid belongs more to the PV generation and the first generation, I would say. Sauvignon Gris and Bronner belongs to the third generation, I think. So it's not hybrid in this case anymore. And Sauvignon Gris, when I'm right, when I remember right, it's the last parents are Cabernet Sauvignon and Bronner of Sauvignon Gris, and yeah, it's a very nice grape. It's possible to make different styles of wine, and it has a very nice acidity and keep it high, and which is in our region quite a goal because of the soils which comes out. The mother soil is volcanic, and in our part where our vineyards are, we have a lot of loam with some gravel or sand islands, and sometimes kind of opak, you know, very hard and loam, and so we have quite high pH in the wines. We harvest with 3.2 up to 3.4, 3.5. So there's a nice challenge in the cellar also with a lot of microbiological activity. What reminds me back to the permaculture stuff, because there it also belongs to more biodiversity. With more biodiversity, we have more different insects, and with different insects, what we have more biodiversity in our microbial flora.
Before Monty is asking his next question, I have two more popping up now, so people seem to be interested. And one more. Are PB grapes the future of growing wine in wet regions like Austria?
I would say can be, but the experience is quite short. Experience with PB grapes is 30, 40 years old, so it's not so much. Maybe, let's say 5 centuries, but it's no time. And to think to don't do anything at the PB grapes, to don't help them or something, it would be wrong thinking, because fungi have a quite quick generation growing. So from one generation to the next, it goes quite quick. We call mutation.
It's one of
when you do nothing,
words
it
nowadays.
can happen that they go over the resistance of the grapes. So I would say you have to have also keep an eye on that, and have to look where. Yeah, that's brings me to the beginning of our discussion, where I plant, on which soil, on which slope, and what are planting there.
And when the plant is not the right plant for that place, we will have problems and have to do more.
And do you need to use copper and sulfur on the PV varieties?
We do in our region. It's a subtropical climate, so we have 800 up to 1,000 millimeters rain per year, and we do at our PV grapes 2 up to 4 treatments per year. Quite important before and after flowering, and sometimes depending on the variety, also at the beginning in spring, or sometimes in the end of July. For example, muscaris at the warm days with a high humidity, oidium can be such thing to have an eye on.
Okay, before handing over to Monty again, a last question. Talking about permaculture and herbs, can you name a few examples of what grows between the vines and of tea that you use?
We started one experiment to plant Zitronenthymian and 2 different 𝗜𝘁𝗿𝗁𝗁𝗿 directly under the vines. And the question, because the question belongs to permaculture, in our case, we create islands in the vineyard or next to the vineyard. So it's not directly planted in the vines or in the vineyard. It's, for example, on the side or in the middle of the vineyard, a bigger place, a bigger island with a higher diversity of plants. And there, for example, rhabarber, because of the oxalic acid.
Thank you. Sorry, Monty, for keeping you.
That's all right. That's interesting. I've got one quick question for the wine, the Cara. What is its aging potential? Is it a wine to be drunk immediately, or can it last in bottle for 2 or 3 years or even longer?
Thumbs up P. When I taste the open bottle, it's quite good after 10 days. So connected on that, I would say 10 years or more is possible, because of the young vines which are build the wine. I would say drink it between 5 and 10 years and enjoy it.
Okay, perfect. All right. I like another one of your lines on your website. You say, "We harvest our produce with joy and extreme satisfaction." Well, that sounds great. Nice that you love your work.
It's a rainy day.
Yeah. All right, take care. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you. You too. Enjoy.
Keep up the good work as well.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Birgit, we move to the 𝗏𝘁𝗍𝗏𝗍.
Okay, Birgit first or Judith? Who's next?
It's Judith, not Birgit, but it's not the first time.
That's all right. Hi, Judith. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. You were born into a wine family. You studied wine growing and winemaking, and you worked in various places across the world. But it was actually in Austria where you discovered biodynamics via the Panobile group, yeah? Why did biodynamics appeal to you?
I wouldn't say I really discovered it. I'd rather say it discovered us somehow. So at that time when we were thinking about changing things, it became quite obvious in our area that the soil management that we had and that we used to have was not going to keep our vines healthy for the future. So we were discussing a lot, especially among colleagues in the Panobile Association, and somehow the teacher that Fred initially mentioned, his name is Andrew Laurent, he came to our area and he just managed to, I don't know, to ignite us. We were really very excited about biodynamics suddenly, and he managed that all of us converted from conventional to biodynamics in one step. I never expected how life-changing this actually would be. Of course, first we only thought about the vineyards and everything, but actually it changed my views on many aspects of life, on food, on raising children, just on many things. I think it's a holistic thing, and the conversion is it has an influences on all parts of our lives.
I mean, you're obviously enthusiastic, but on the practical side, were there any difficulties on the practical level in terms of machinery, or maybe some of the employees weren't happy, or how did that?
Well, it was not easy in the beginning, and our estate we took 1 year of just preparing and thinking about how things are going to work. And also, as far as manpower was concerned, it was not so easy, because we actually could only start as soon as my husband Uli joined in. Then we were just enough people to get it going and to make a good job. So in the beginning, yeah, it was quite difficult, and still we did not have animals in the farm. Before, my parents and my grandparents, they used to have a small farm with grains and a few animals, just very little. But this actually all got lost during just one generation. And it's not so easy to reestablish all that. So we made a cooperation with a cow farmer nearby. So we get the manure from him regularly, and we do our own compost, and we changed the soil management immediately. Luckily, we never irrigated, which is a great thing, I think. So our vines were used to having low water supply, and cover crops. It worked from the beginning, actually, because we were always told, that's also what I learned in school, that in the Burgenland it's not so easy to work with cover crops, because it's you don't have enough water, and the plants are going to consume too much water, and the vines are going to start to suffer. But actually this never happened. And we really had, before that, we really had erosion problems in the area, although we don't have steep slopes. But still, even in the plain land, you could see that the soils really lacked humus, and we needed to change this. And I think it was much more, actually it was a necessity to change things, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the way that you've described it is very interesting in terms of the historical timeline of agricultural families. If a generation like you manages to get the farm just in time before it's kind of, quotes, completely ruined in terms of the soil, the biodynamic treatments can get that vineyard or piece of land back together in maybe 2, 3, 5 years fairly quickly. Otherwise, it's lost. So your story is quite interesting in the sense that you got there just in time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you think natural winemaking and biodynamics is better understood now internationally than it was, say, even 5 years ago, where there was still quite a lot of skepticism?
I think so, yes. I think there was a big change, and people are much more open-minded now, and maybe looking for new flavors, and they don't care so much about rules, or maybe even about wine guides anymore. They trust they start to trust their own taste more than they used to, I think. And I think that's a very good thing, because it makes the whole wine world much more diverse, and I really appreciate that. I like that.
So to talk about, that's the wine world in general. What about your staff? Were they happy about going biodynamics, or was it a big learning curve for them?
So my father, he always thought about going organic. I don't think that he would ever have done biodynamic, but still he cooperated, and he tried to do the whole conversion together with us. So that was actually a good thing. And for all the workers, it was never an issue, actually. They trusted our choice.
Mm-hmm. What about the idea of the farm organism? I mean, you did speak about animals. I mean, do you have a big composting program, or?
Big, I don't know. We do about 500 tons of cow manure per year, so it's a little bit. And now we have a small chicken project. So we have a vineyard with a fence around. We have about 40 chickens there, but still we don't have any cows or sheep. But this is something that we are thinking about a lot and talking about a lot, and I really would like to implement that also in the future.
So the wine you're showing today is the name of it is Bamboul, and if I've understood correctly, anything labeled Bamboul from you is a skin contact wine with no sulfites in. Yeah, just tell us about your Chardonnay.
Yeah, so the Bamboula range is just a zero intervention range of wines, and the Chardonnay was the first wine I did with zero sulfur added. So that was in 2011, and now we're having the 2018. It's a Chardonnay that grows in the plainland near Lake Neusiedl, and we have a gravelly soil there. We try to pick the grapes rather early. We do skin contact of about 12 days to 14 days on this wine. I like to press before the fermentation is completely finished because I want to avoid too much oxygen during the moment of pressing. So the wine still ferments when it goes to the amphora. In that case, it was a 1,000 liter amphora, and there it finished fermentation and stayed there for about 1 year on the entire lease, and then we bottled it.
So obviously bottled with no added sulfites. Do you think I mean, how has the team changed from your view, from a biodynamics perspective over the last 5 years? Do you think there's a much greater openness towards, quotes, alternative wines, whether they're biodynamic or natural?
Could you repeat the bit?
Yeah, I didn't get everything, I'm sorry.
Oh, right, okay, so just the idea of wines with no added sulfites, or even biodynamic wines, are people more open-minded now than they were?
I definitely think they are, because I think it's just because of the taste of it, and you can feel the energy in all those wines, I think. And that's, I think everybody can feel it, everybody can taste this, and many people appreciate it.
Do you think, I mean, having biodynamic fruit in terms of acidity and pH, does that actually help this kind of chemical balance in the grapes for a wine that would never have any sulfites added to it?
I think it's essential, because it's not just about not adding SO2. You need to have perfect fruit. You need to have perfectly healthy fruit, and you need to have, I think, a different concept of the wine from the beginning. And so we don't touch when we do the maceration on the skins, we hardly ever touch the wine. It's just, we let it soak, we let it go. We are really very, very gentle on all the vinification procedures that we do. And we don't do any wrecking. And I think it's, yeah, you just need to have a different concept, and biodynamic fruit is just the base for this.
Yeah, it's interesting also the fact that if you have good quality fruit, in this case biodynamic, you're actually spending less money on moving wines around and fiddling around with them. Yeah, so there's another environmental gain there, I think, that probably is often ignored by most. I mean, how do you see, final question, the market for these kind of wines? Is it going to continue to grow and move from maybe everyday wines to more premium wines, premium natural, premium biodynamic natural wines?
That would be great, I think. But so now we export our wines to many different countries. So we have like quite a big market available for the wines that we make from our 20 hectares. But I think that it still can grow in the future. Yeah.
Perfect. Alrighty. Anybody got any questions?
Yes. regarding the style of the wine, my bottle has sauerkraut. Is the bottle wrong or is it normal?
Yeah, so the wine was bottled without the SO2 and with quite a lot of the lees in it. So I think you'd better just decant it, and then it's going to open up. It's always quite reductive in the beginning.
Thank you. So, moving from Judith to Birgit, finally, not mixing up the names. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Manuel.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I was just saying thanks as well. It was nice speaking to her.
Yeah. So we're coming to the last flight. It's a red wine flight, both Blaufränkisch and both from Neusiedlersee, Birgit Braunstein and Weiler Artinger.
Right, are they
Hi. Nice to see you.
Hi, is that
We
Birgit?
don't have the videos on, right?
No. Can you hear me, Birgit?
Yes, I have the video on and I have the...
Yeah, I can see you.
There we are.
Yeah, does it work now?
Yes.
Nice to see you.
Okay, hi everybody. So...
Hi, Birgit, and we start with you.
Okay, great.
So Birgit is like a kindred spirit, because we both discovered biodynamics in Bordeaux many years ago. We didn't know each other then. You discovered biodynamics at Canon-la-Gaffelière. Birgit, why did that make an impression on you?
Well, at that time, you saw a lot of famous vineyards over there. And I was wondering about the soil and about the plants, and they were tired and almost no diversity. And then I saw the difference in the Canon-la-Gaffelière or La Mandotte vineyards. So much life and so much vitality. And when I tasted the wines and I followed the philosophy, I was really impressed by that. And I said, okay, that's it. That's the way I want to work in my hometown, my home place.
Mm-hmm. So when you did take over the winery and you went biodynamics, the first thing that you said you had to understand was, I have to understand the vineyards better. Why and how did you go about this?
Well, my first vintage was 96, and it was one of the most difficult vintages in Austria. So much rain, and for me, I didn't study wine growing. I was growing up in a family with a 400-year tradition, but I did a tourism school, so I was learning making wine in Bordeaux and by myself. So and the first vintage was really, really hard stuff, 96. But then I step by step I went in, and then came the first hot vintage, the vintage 2000 and 2003, and then I saw, okay, I can make red wine, but there is something happen in the vineyards. There is so much pressure, nutrition, and too much sugar, too high sugar level, too much alcohol potential, and I was waiting for the phenolical ripeness and the aromas, and I saw there is a gap between. So that's an urgent thing to do, to change. And this was the reason why we get to change in organic. And when you do biodynamic, I mean, biodynamic helps you. It's one of the biggest principles of biodynamic. I think it's that you have to observe, to learn, to have a look at your plants, at your nature, you speak the language of the nature. You have to understand what can I do, what is necessary to use. I mean that we have a recipe, we have our preparations and we have our teas, but when to use what, this is a kind of awareness. You have to cultivate a special awareness about. And it means you develop a special communication with nature, and you have to develop a special understanding that everything is related. And this is biodiversity, and this is also the meaning of, for me, of biodynamic. You learn to understand what is needed and which treatment can help you to balance and to heal nature.
So that's your perspective. If I'm a worker in your vineyard and, you know, I like you, you're my boss, I actually really like you. And then I think, hang on, what she's talking about biodynamics. Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to have more difficult work to do? Why am I doing it?
Well, I think we have our employees, our workers are with us for more than 20 years. So they're like family members, and I would love to you work with us and you stay with us then for more than 20 years. So it is, I think, if you go through biodynamic vineyard all over the world, you get a similar feeling. It is that you feel this vivacity, and the healthiness of the vineyard, and it makes it different for a worker, and for us to work in the vineyards. If it smells of chemical treatments, then if it smells like camellia, it smells for nettle teas or something like that. So our workers, they should they are skilled by biodynamic, by soft pruning. They know what to do. They know our plants. They are more than 20 years by us, but they have their responsibility, but also their joy. And I think this is one of the most important thing of all of us. I hope you can feel that that we have so much passion and so much joy with our work in the vineyards, but in the cellar, and with our products, with our wine. And that was what we want to send out. And everyone, all the people are working with us in this state. They influence our wines and finally also our wine. So
you talk about that because they're conscious human beings as we are.
Yeah.
The workers, their consciousness, as the owner's conscious, has some kind of positive, or at least an impact on the wine expression, and you say that's very important.
Definitely. So what we try is that for sure work has to be done, but it should be done with knowledge, but also with your heart, and that all people working with us should be like family members and should enjoy their work.
Tell us about the 2013 Blaufränkisch Tannau.
Okay,
before we come to that fabulous wine, I have a question. How difficult is it to get your staff to follow your ideas?
Well, it was not really difficult, similar than to Judith, because as we have so much, so everything is a process. I mean, we didn't change very fast, so it was a process in our family, in my mind, then in the mind of my family, and then in the mind of my employees. I cannot do it on my own. 20 hectares, I cannot do it alone. So I need all my family and all my employees. And so we did seminars. We also were skilled by ourselves, but also by some consultant. And I think there was no rush. Yeah, and for me, the most important thing when I wanted to change into biodynamic, it was my mindset. You never want to do all this complex work, and so the first step was just do one thing. So I started with the preparation 500, 501. Then the next step were the teas. So then the compost. Now we have the animals. My workers, they are now also, we are working also with our sheep and goats and chickens. So step by step, no rush, but with fun.
Fantastic. Excellent.
Thank you. So coming back to Blaufränkisch, yeah?
Yep.
Oh yeah, so it's coming out from a very special vineyard, the so-called Ried Tennau. Tennau, it's a single vineyard, and it's my eldest Blaufränkisch vineyard. It's now 65 years old, so it's coming from my grandfather, and I'm located in Purbach, and it's a closed village, and our vineyards are outside of the village on the hills of the Leiterberg. And a Leiterberg consists of schist. I have also some rock here. Schist. It's It's the ground soil, and on this schist is that chalky limestone, and this is like a fossil, 20 million years old. I have another one, an oyster. Yeah. So this is about 20 meter on the schist. So the Leiterberg consists on those both soil, and the chalky limestone is about 20 meter at this vineyard. So as you can imagine, the 65 years, so it's not high yield, and it's regulation on its own. But these berries are really small berries, a big skin, and the taste is at any time, any year, very structured, and a lot of blueberries. And well, and this wine we harvest all for sure manually, and I stamp, but then I don't crush the berries. I put the berries into a 1,000-liter oak fermenter. It's closed, and the only thing what I do is wait. So we do all our wines are spontaneously fermented. There is nothing added, but especially for that wine, there is just once, probably per day, a bunch down by hand, but then I leave it for 3 months on skin. So the barrel was closed 3 months, and just before Christmas I opened it, and then there was pressing in 2 years in a 500-liter Austrian oak barrel stored.
Perfect. Interesting.
And I think the idea was, as in my beginning, this vineyard brought a really huge and fat and Blaufränkisch, so full of structure. But what I'm looking for is the defined, precise tannin structure. Biodynamic brings us the sugar level and the phenolic tannin level in a point, really rather early and very precise. And that I have the duty, I think, as a winemaker to get this out, to work out that in the cellar. So less treatment and get this precise and defined tannin from the chalky limestone. That also the taste in the wine.
Okay. Alrighty. Should I embarrass you, Birgit? Can I read something out to you? So I visited your winery on the 27th of February 2018. This was one of the most memorable winery visits I've attended, based on how in tune Birgit was with her land and its history, her vines, her winemaking, and her employees. There you go.
Many thanks. Really? I get goosebumps. Thank you very much, Monty.
Thank you, Birgit. And now it's on Kurt 𝗏𝘁𝗏𝗏, the very last producer we're showing today, and his Blaufränkisch Leiterberg der Ried Oberer Wald 2018.
Where is he?
Kurt, are you there?
I'm here. You can't see me?
Yes.
At least you can hear me.
Yeah. How are you doing, Ed? So you describe yourself as a doer rather than a sermonizer. So when you were having problems with bunch rot and a disconnect between flavor ripeness and analytical ripeness in your grapes, you put your empiricist hat on and trialed biodynamics. What was the conclusion of the trials?
Well, it's a little Birgit said it already, that especially in the red wines, and for me it was especially in the 1990s that the sugar ripeness came much earlier than the physiological ripeness. That was a big problem, especially in Rust, where I'm from. We are a sweet wine region. Sugar ripe grapes are always easily affected by noble rot then. And that's a horror on red wines. I don't want to make sweet red wines. I do some, but normally not. So yeah, that was the point that catched me really for biodynamic, to bring the physiological ripeness earlier and together with the sugar ripeness, so that we can really make balanced wines, finesse wines, complex wines. The lower alcohol, that's fantastic.
And I can truly say it's true. It's also that the bunches are slightly more opened up. That makes the skin thicker. That's also especially seen on this Blaufränkisch, but also on the Neuburger, which is my favorite grape on the whites. We can see these advantages of having a more opened up bunch and more healthy grapes, in fact.
Okay. So could you, I mean, presumably that allowed you to become a little bit even more creative than you are normally in terms of winemaking, because you're quite a creative guy. So that must have been a great boon to you, a great positive, yeah?
Yes, it was really positive. I mean, with biodynamic, I also started with spontaneous fermentations and no addings anymore on the wines. So, and it didn't change the wine completely dramatically, but it changed the freshness and the complexity of the wines.
Were you confident straight away though? But when you got the fruit coming in, obviously every vintage is different. Did you think about, well, actually maybe I've got more flexibility in terms of my creativity with the winemaking, or was it were you a little bit kind of, hey, this can't be true early on?
No, it's really you're more flexible with the winemaking because the wines are more how to say. I think in also the wine needs more oxygen if you farm biodynamic, so you are not always on the hurry to protect the wine or the juice or from oxygen in any way, and that gives you more flexibility. It gives you more
creativity.
Winemaking, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, did you change with biodynamics? Did you change, for example, your oak regime? Did that make a difference in terms of, you know, fruit tannins and oak tannins? The marriage between the two, from going from not biodynamic to being biodynamic.
The oak management changed a little later, I would say. It's at first I really changed to biodynamic, and then with tasting and getting more fruit and saying, well, step by step, then I saw that the too much oak is influencing or covering the fruit, and then I didn't like it anymore. So then a few years later, I used less new oak, and I'm happy with that.
So would it be fair to say that with less oak and with the fruit you actually have wines that would live for longer because of the biodynamic effect, or not?
The wines, yeah, definitely. I would say they live for longer. Yeah.
Okay. So you're making Blaufränkisch from two different terroirs, which are not too far from each other, I think. And both wines feel and taste very different. What are these two terroirs, and what are the differences between the two of them?
Well, here in Rust, we have the Ruster Hügelland, so we are not really on it's a Leiterberg called Leiterberg, but it's not really on the Leitergebirge. But on the Ruster Hügelland, in the south part of the Ruster Hügelland is a schist soil, microschist soil, granite and gneiss, and the northern part where this wine comes from, where the Oberer Wald vineyard is fossil limestone. And yeah, so we have these two very different soils making different wines. I always say that on the microschist soil, the wine is more the mouth filling.
Yeah, open.
It's deeper, more concentrated tannins. But it's like I have a nice picture. If you put water on a stone, on a schist stone or a granite stone, it runs over the stone. It goes in white, and so that's like the wine. You take it in the mouth, and it makes the palate white. And then if you take a limestone, where the Oberer Wald comes from, it is if you take a piece of limestone, it sucks up the water. And so in the mouth, also the wines from limestone, they focus. You get a very focus on the middle, on a very fresh style of wine. That's the big difference on these two terroirs.
I mean, did biodynamics change the longevity of the wines as well, from your perspective?
Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm. I mean, do people pick that up, your clients? So is it really obvious for them, or do you have to say, you know, you're going to find this in this wine and give them a guide first, or do they just say, hey, your wine's changed?
Yeah, we were not people picked it up from tasting. Yes, from the looking. I mean, we changed the labels a little bit from the color and slightly, but also we didn't make any big advertisement that we are now organic or biodynamic. So some people discovered that we are farming biodynamic truly after 7 years, 8 years. Old customers that come for 20 years already, but they like the wines more than before, and that's the positive way, you know.
You always had cows, didn't you? You had cows before 𝗠ecie went biodynamic, and you've still got the cows today. Why are they so important for this organism idea? Had to ask you about the cows. It was in my contract.
Yeah, the cows were always here with 17 years of break from 97 to 2014 when they came back. I mean, it's historically not long ago. My father, as a young boy in the 50s, had to work with the bull in the vineyard to do the plowing. Then a few years later, he used the horse, and in the middle of the 60s, there came the tractor, and always an advantage and a step forward. So in the old days, after working with the tractor, the cows were just for having fertilizer and for having meat. But now the new idea since 2014 is having a small cattle farming for making the 500 preparation from our own manure and making also special compost for compost tea sprayings, and yes, for meat as well, a little bit.
Since we have not kept the time, which was clear, could we concentrate 1 more minute on the wine? And there is like great compliments popping up. Kept best to last, great wine, court, says Rose, and Götz, great wine. Yeah, 2 words to your wine.
Well, the one is a Blaufränkisch, full-bodied Blaufränkisch from a limestone soil here in Rust. It's a south and slightly east-facing slope, the Oberer Wald. It is one higher vineyard for Rust. So it gets very good ripeness every year, is hand-picked, of course. And because it's a small vineyard, it is fermented in open vats and with punching down by hand 3 times a day. And after fermentation, it goes directly into barrique barrels. In this case, it's 50% new oak and 50% second fillings. 2 years in barrel. Yeah.
Perfect.
Hope everyone enjoys it.
Well, Kurt, really nice to talk to you. Instead of 465 emails, it's much nicer this way. So,
absolutely.
Keep up the good work, huh?
So I think we're coming to an end. I ask all the producers and speakers to make themselves shown, come on stage again. We stop with the recording, so everyone is free